Hi, gang. I'm really enjoying this series, so I think it's going to become permanent as long as you have questions. This is my answers to questions part 3. People in my area says that playing in the jazz guitar trio, guitar, drums, and bass format is quite hard. What skills do you think the guitar player needs in order to play a guitar trio properly? Well, you have to have complete mastery of the tunes, and especially the harmony of the tunes, thorough knowledge of all the chord voicings, and you need a certain command of the instrument, For example, when I play a chord, A minor 7, something like that, I don't think of it as a chord shape. I think of it as what notes am I playing? I'm thinking of all those individual notes. So that's one thing, You got to have a great time. You have to have your own time. And you have to find a good drummer and a bass player, which is not easy to do, It's like that old joke. A guy finds a genie, and the genie says, well, you got a few questions, you got a few wishes. But so, what could I do for you? And the guy says, well, I'd like to have peace in the Middle East, Can you do that? And the guy shows him, the genie says, well, what are you talking about? So the guy pulls out a map, and the genie takes a look at it and says, I don't know if I could do that. That's been going on a long time. It's a very complicated situation. What else can I do for you? And the guy says, well, I play guitar, and I'm trying to find, a good bass player and a drummer that gets along together and everybody agrees the same thing. The genie says, can I take a look at that map again? Anyway, it's okay. So, all right, next. Here we go. This is from Nathang. Given the depth and breadth of your career, I've been interested to hear your thoughts on the current state of jazz music. What would you hope for the future of jazz? Well, I think it's becoming watered down. It's way overproduced. And, with studio technology, anything can be done. And I think it's losing some of the spirit of the music. And I do think that it's getting less sophisticated as time goes on. What I hope for the future, more education in the schools and less influence of the media, because people think that, a guy sings a tune and and these artists, so-called artists, act like they're composers. I call them 3-chord geniuses. I wish the new trend in music would be talent. I don't see much of that anymore, especially in the pop culture. So, all right, next. Do you use any stomp boxes, rack effects, and what do you think about them? I personally don't use them. I think the guitar by itself is such a beautiful instrument, and there's no need to discolor the beauty of the instrument. That's what I think, It changes the way you play. I think it can, but not for the better. I don't think much of them, I don't appreciate them, not too much. Maybe a little chorus here and there, but that gets so old real fast, to my ears anyway, just my personal opinion. Okay, what's up next for the site? Can we expect more bebop analysis? Well, I think that if you go through the site, you'd have enough knowledge to analyze them by yourself, I would hope. And if you can't, start studying the site, There's a lot of approaches on the site. I hate that word, but You can't have just one approach because everything just will sound the same. And yeah, occasionally something will come up. There'll be some bebop analysis, but by now, people could tell a line like, +5 and, whatever the notes are. But yeah, there'll be more. Okay. How did you balance your career with family, whether on the road or teaching's very demanding life? Any tips you can share on time management outside the practice room? Well, early in my career, I did a ton of traveling. I was with the Osmonds. We went around the world to the Far East. I was gone for 6 months, maybe with a couple days coming back to the States. And, that was tough. I kind of missed my son growing up a little bit because I did an awful lot of traveling with the Osmonds, Doc Severinsen, Lola Falana, tons and tons of people, and that was hard. But when I began my jazz career, most of the gigs were on the weekends, so I'd only be gone 1 or 2 days, 3 days tops, sometimes a week, but I would usually take my wife with me, and kids, like a trip to New York, go play the Iridium or one of those places, I'd take them with me, so. And you got to have a very understanding wife, but she likes to travel, and I don't. So it works out good. Okay. I listened to Midnight Blue album, and I've always loved its contemporary vibe. Do you listen to players like Pat Metheny, John Scofield? Do you have any favorite players of that ilk? To tell you the truth, no, I don't listen. First of all, I don't listen to many guitar players, okay? And no, they're both fine players. And like I said, I don't want to comment on anybody's playing. That would be very uncool, I mentioned it somewhere on the site. But no, not really. A lot of that contemporary vibe on that CD was a suggestion by the producer, who was a very good producer. And I like that record because I like the writing on it, But no, I really don't listen to those guys. But like I said, I don't listen to many guitar players. I'd rather hear good jazz pianist, Mulgrew Miller, stuff like that. I am a committed follower of your fingering system and have been for many years. Now, since your earliest publication. With that, I am also aware that some of the greatest players use some rather unorthodox fingering, as is evident by watching the numerous videos. 2 players especially are Wes, and never used his pinky. Tal seemed more inclined to only use 3 fingers as well for singer lines. Though we executed them in a completely different way than Wes, and sometimes playing the exact same thing with different fingers. Well, you mentioned 2 of my favorite players. And, the guitar is kind of like a mutt, if you're talking about dogs. It's never been formally, I don't know what the word is, but I'll give you an example. If you get 5 violinists, or 10, in a room, and put a piece of music in front of them, I would bet my life that they all use the same fingering, because that system has been formalized, and guys like Tal and Wes, they used whatever fingers they could to get their idea out, their musical idea out. So, but I care more about the sound than the fingerings. And the reason I'm so strict about the fingerings is because guitar players notoriously have bad ears, can't pick up things off of records. That's because there's too many fingering possibilities. So what these 5 fingerings are is a way to connect the fingers to your eyes and ears together with the sounds on the guitar, okay? When you can master those fingerings, it really doesn't matter what fingering you use, okay? But you need to start with some basis, some basic foundation. so you could start that process. Good question. All right. Could you do I forgot about this one. Could you do a lick analysis of the lick? You know what? I think I know what you mean, but I don't know the lick. I'm sorry, but I'd have to get back to you on that. I see you got a link to that, but I didn't do my homework, so I can't answer that. I'll get back to that. That's a good question. I think I know what you're talking about. I'm hoping you could expect a 7-string, tasteful way to integrate utilizing the 7-string. It appears that you used it much like a piano player uses the lower octaves. Not all the time. But when you need to add depth and bass notes in your guitar duo or solo, any tips on how to integrate that? Okay, forget about linking that to the 5 fingerings, okay, because there is no good way to do it. The only suggestion I could make for you is use it at the low A string very sparingly, okay, because that too gets old, you know. What's nice about it is, okay, I'm going to play G major 9. Okay, now, if I had a 7-string, I might want, okay, say it's the end of the tune, I would like to put this G down here, but I don't have the string. But it would sound like this. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, because that's the way it would come out on the 7-string. So you got to use it very sparingly, and I hardly use it for single notes. See, so that's why it's separate from the 5 fingerings. At least that's the way I thought about it. Okay, one thing I've noticed about most great players is how calm they are while playing. There are exceptions, of course. How do you get to that point of perceived effortlessness? 40 years of playing? I don't get nervous when I play anymore. I think I know what you kind of mean, but first of all, I know the repertoire so well, and I know the instrument very well, and so it is effortless for me, you know. My nerves went away in my 20s, I guess, somewhere in there. I guess I started to be less nervous in my 30s, okay? I'm 63 now, so time and confidence. Got to have confidence in yourself, okay? I hated playing nervous. I despised it, you know? And don't take this the wrong way, but it's like, you know, when I realized that, you know, playing jazz music is not like you're up there, you know, circling the earth and trying to land a shuttle. You know, that would make me nervous, you know. This is not rocket science, you know. You know, to me it's fun. So if it makes me nervous, it's not so much fun. It does go away, you know. It with experience and practice, it disappears, you know. I can't actually say a given time when it stopped, you know, when it went away. But I'm sure, like everything in music, it was gradual. Everything's gradual. Good question, though. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Going to put you on a spot. What jazz standards do you not like to play and why? That's a good one. Well, there's a tune called Isfahan that I don't like to play. Probably because I don't understand it as well as I should. That's one that comes to mind. I get tired of playing impressions. I get tired of the modal tones. You know, it's not that I don't like to play them. I'll play them when the mood strikes me, but, you know, or tunes that, you know, one chord fits all, or 2 chords that go up and down a half step. Not much of a challenge. So I guess stuff like that. I mean, I like most tunes that have good melodies and good chord changes, you know. I can't think of anything else that comes to mind, you know. I mean, I like Sandal a lot, even though it's overplayed, but because it has basic 2/5s that go into a couple tonal centers. So that's why I use that. All right, more. Something about, this is more of a comment, so I won't read it. How important would you rate such skills as sight reading? Did it improve your playing knowledge of the fretboard? Absolutely. I think every guitar player should know how to read for all the obvious reasons, and I know some greats were not great readers. For me, it helped my playing a lot because I was able to sight read, and it also is good to get work, And it's like a guy wants to be a novelist, but he doesn't want to learn how, that's not a good analogy. Guy wants to be a novelist, but he doesn't want to learn the English language, or doesn't know how to read, that's pretty tough. So to me, one of the reasons I like music is there's very few black and whites in it, this or that, this or that. So you'll find exceptions to the rule, but I think it helped my playing a lot and helped my understanding of music immensely. So learn how to read. Okay, let's see what else we got. That might be the end of this. Wait a minute. I know there's more. Hold on. What else? I know there's more here. Okay. Here's a gear question. What is your opinion of the various string types? Labella, nylon tape, round wound, or flats? Well, I guess each one has a pro or a con. I'm partial to the half rounds. I like those, The round wounds are bright, or appear to be brighter. Their tone lasts a lot longer than a flat wound, but you can't beat flat wounds for ballad playing, or if you don't like that noise, you have to decide for yourself. I prefer the half rounds, I think they're called, I use GHS half rounds, 13 through 56. And I've been using them for years and years and years, and they seem to work well for me. I know you've said many times that things only line up in a book, and the idea is to play horizontally rather than vertically chord to chord. That being said, how would you approach improvising over tunes that are not so linear? Songs like Inner Urge and Yes or No. Well, let me say this. I don't separate horizontal to vertical playing. There's no difference in my mind. You have to make good lines, good melodies, okay? I'm not that familiar with those two tunes you mentioned, okay? But a dominant seventh, even if it's a mangled, not a mangled dominant, but, like stuff very altered, I'm not that familiar with Inner Urge. But the chords have to be a major, a minor seventh, or a dominant seventh. Just because it says +9, flat 9, plus 5, that does not dictate a certain scale or a line that you should play. You either address those notes or you don't. You can't take it out of context. You just can't do snapshot analysis. That doesn't make music. That makes theory, So I don't see a difference. Major, minor 7, flat 5, or dominant 7th. And that's all there is. So the chords have to fall into one of those categories, whether they have alterations or extensions. Good question, too. Okay. Similar question. I suppose, given your experience, doesn't have much, but how do you tackle a new chart to a tune you don't know? Well, there's no approach to it. I mean, like I just said, it's a similar question, I get to do it a lot sometimes, especially with original tunes. And the first time through, I can manage okay. And the second time through, I find some little nuances in the tune. And the more you play the tune, the more you find out, And it's mostly trial and error, You try a certain note, and you think it's going to sound a certain way, and it doesn't when you try it. So don't play that note no more if you don't like it. It's a lot of trial and error. Okay. I have a difficult question to put into words, but the answer may not be difficult for you. We met a few years ago when you participated in a clinic in Pittsburgh. I came downtown later and watched you and Joe Negri together in the Penn Hotel lobby. I remember that gig well. We talked outside, smoked a cigarette. And remember you said how easy it is to play with Joe. So my question for you is about what does make a guitarist easy to play with? I'm sure it has much to do with listening while you're playing, anticipating, not getting in the way. There's probably much more. And perhaps the best accompanying guitarist not only keeping time and harmony, not just listening and follow. Maybe the other player also has to lead, taking you in surprising directions. Great question. Well, the idea of like a guitar duo, let's say. The idea is, for me, if I'm playing, with Howard Alden or Joe Negri, I want to play things that make Joe Negri and Howard Alden sound good, And that's a simple, so you have to have an ear, you have to know the tune, You can't play too loud, You don't want to overplay. I mean, I know some guys I've played with, it's like when they go to comp, they're still soloing, showing off, how many different chord inversions they can play and just not listening, And there's a lot of them out there. I mentioned no names, but that's a big problem, So you won't find me playing with guys like that, And same thing with a piano player, guitar and piano, Got to stay out of the way and make the soloist sound good, And sometimes you could feed a soloist an idea that they can maybe use later in their solo, That happens a lot. So that's a good question. Some guys are just easy. If you find a guy like Joe Negri, he thinks harmonically similar, and a lot of times uncannily the same way as I do about a lot of this repertoire. So, I kind of know what he's going to do next, because it's something I would do. That makes it very, very easy. Yeah, that was a great gig. I remember it. Okay, next I'm going to do some questions that were posted on YouTube, okay? I'm really enjoying this a lot. Okay, this is a question about scale length, okay? It's a rather long question, so I won't read it all. I don't think that changing scale lengths is good. Find some length that you like and stick to it. Switching around, I mean, that's hard for me to do, and I've been playing almost 50 years. And I don't like switching scale lengths, and find something you like. And I'm not sure playability of the smaller guitar, since larger scale equals higher string tension. I'm not so sure that that's true, because I've had various guitars over the years, and the string tension comes from, I guess the neck angle, how it meets the body. I don't find a relationship between scale length and string tension. I think what you're feeling is, you said you got a George Benson guitar, and you have a 14 on it, okay, for a high E. Well, that's going to have a lot more tension than 11. That's a big jump, Why don't you start with 12s, see what happens. Okay. What guitar is that? Okay, this is a Benedetto Elite Custom. The custom part is I have the fret markers, which Bob that's not his preferred look. I asked for Bob to make one like this, exactly for this reason, for teaching, so students could see where my hands are. But it's your basic Benedetto. I think at one time it was called a Bravo Elite. It's just basic. It's a laminate too. Okay. I find myself apprehensive regarding gig booking. I have a couple of projects and think they're good, but I can't seem to motivate myself to book them. Do you think my intuition is telling me something? I think you're suffering from analysis paralysis. Just do it. Get over it. Just do it. Don't put it off. You'll get a better feel for it once you try it. Without any effort to try it, you're going to stand still. Okay. You mentioned in this an earlier video you took a side gig bartending for a couple of years. Were you still practicing daily during that time? I've always tried to... Okay. All right. At that time, I had just moved back from LA and I quit the music business. So I didn't even have a guitar. Maybe I had one. But no, I gave up playing music. I was 34, 35 at the time. I didn't play for a whole 2 years. And it took a lot of work to get back into the guitar. But no, and I enjoyed being a bartender. You know, I wanted to learn a new business. I went on managing the place. And I liked that. You know, I had a good time. It's like hosting a party at your house, you know, every night. So I enjoyed myself. I met a lot of great people. You know, it was a lot of fun. But I gradually gravitated back to music. And that's when I devoted myself to jazz and to, you know, stop playing all other kind of stuff that I didn't enjoy. Okay. Have you ever considered playing solid body electric guitars for recordings or performances? Yes, many times. I have a Bill Cummins guitar, solid body. I used it to play with the U.S. Air Force Band about 6 or 7 months ago. I like solid body guitars. You know, they have their purpose, you know, when the volume gets loud. I like them. I certainly like Bill Cummins' work. And it's a very inexpensive guitar. It's about $1,500, something like that. It's called a GS something. And I play it as often as I can. Sometimes one time I'll use it on a video. Okay. On Midnight Blue, there's a couple tracks with a Benny, which is this Benedetto solid body. I think it's a tune called Funk and Benny. Got to be careful when you say that. And maybe another one. I'm not real sure, but I know there's at least one with the solid body. Are any tricks to playing along with jazz vocalists? Well, first of all, they have to be able to sing. And again, it's knowing the tune, putting it in other keys. There's really no tricks to it, you know. You have to, what I find not tedious, but difficult, sometimes could be difficult, is following the vocalist when it's the rubato, you know. You have to know the words. Like, okay. You have to play this chord. That's the vocalist to come in, so it helps if you know the words. You know, that's the only trick I could think of. Okay, learn the words. What is the best way to make an income as a solo guitarist? I'll let you know when I find out. Geez, you know, you could try making a solo record and hope people will hire you for solo gigs. There's no good way, you know, especially now, like I said earlier, with the media, you know, with the three-chord geniuses that are all over the TV and stuff. I mean, it's pretty tough, you know, it's getting harder and harder, you know. You know, people always say, well, it's going to die out with this generation. Jazz will never die. There'll always be, you know, people that appreciate this kind of music, you know, and I see it in schools all over the country. So there's no shortage of fans, but there is shortage of income. Okay. What's it like cutting your first album and hearing tracks on the radio? Well, I have to tell you, that was a big thrill. It was terrific. You know, at first you just can't believe it. You know, our jazz station back here in the East Coast is WRTI, Temple Station. And, you know, I still get a charge when they play some of my stuff, you know. I'll never get tired of doing that. Okay, I hope I got to everybody's questions. And please post more. I really enjoy doing this series. Thank you very much.